他们的恐惧是我们的武器，我们的胜利。谢谢了，兄弟姐妹们，你们健身了吗？行动，行动，行动！中共，你完了 ！Take down the CCP！
Just beginning for the games you want to play. Bring it on and I will fight to the end. Just watch and see. It's all started, everything's begun, and you are over. Cause we're taking down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. Let's take down the CCP. Let the bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. Let the bullets fly a little longer.
中共，
Let the bullets fly a little
你
longer.
完了！
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
中共，你完了！干灭中国共产党这个 CCP， 才能让我们远离恐惧。Take down CCP。
They try to scare the nation with fabrication, but we see through the lies. We won't fall, we will fight you back. Police corruption with crooked assumption. They ran our lives, but no more. We will win. We will take down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. Let's take down the CCP. Let the bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. Let the bullets fly a little longer.
站起来吧！
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
站起来吧！
Let the bullets fly a little
为
longer.
奴役的人
Let
们
the bullets fly a little longer.
行动！
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
行动！
Let the bullets fly a little
你
longer.
完了
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
！Take down CCP。
The bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down the evil CCP。
In this episode, we provide you with information to answer this question. Why was Isabel, a foreign journalist, given a special privilege to report on Xinjiang in her 2019 Vice documentary, while others were banned? We divided our answer into 4 parts. Part 4. Who is the big boss? In the previous parts, we've spent quite a bit of time on Isabel, the reporter. Now we will take a closer look at Isabel's current employer, Vice Media, and its relationship with Isabel's previous employer, the Chinese Communist Party. The biggest shareholder of Vice Media is TPG Capital, which has a 44% stake in Vice. Shan Weijian, who once was a partner of TPG Capital, is now the chairman and CEO of Pacific Alliance Group (PAG), a leading Asia-focused private equity firm that manages $45 billion in assets around the globe. Shan Weijian, an accomplished Ivy League-educated executive, a successful venture capitalist, comes from a spy family in communist China. Both of his parents worked for the CCP's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, also known as the intelligence agency of the CCP. Unlike Isabel, who at least attempted to conceal her identity by claiming she was an undercover journalist in Xinjiang rather than a CCP propagandist, Shan Weijian has publicly defended Communist China in news articles and on public television. In one of his articles published by the South China Morning Post on October 20th, 2020, 112 days after the enactment of the Hong Kong national security law imposed by the CCP, Shan Weijian wrote, "The freedoms enjoyed by Hong Kong people were seriously threatened and undermined during the violent turmoil in the better half of last year. The national security law ended this reign of terror. Hong Kong remains an open and free society under the rule of law. Hong Kong residents enjoy more political rights today than they did under British colonial rule." As a person who claims residence in Hong Kong for over 20 years and is well connected with the Western world, ought to know what has happened in Hong Kong. His blatant lies expose the fact that he too works for the CCP. The other major shareholder of Vice Media is Disney, owning 16% of Vice. Disney's infamous appeasement to the CCP has been vividly depicted in the South Park Season 23, Episode 2, Banned in China. Here is a clip of it.
Who's the asshole? Which one of you decided to go and start bad-mouthing the Chinese government, huh? Who here thought they had permission to say anything critical of Chinese politics?
Well, it is true, sir. The Chinese seem to exploit their own people with forced labor.
Shut the fuck up, Thor! You're here to flex and not think, you fucking bitch!
A communism fangirl wrapped up in the public image of an award-winning human rights reporter, Isabel Yang, an undercover CCP agent with the facade of a venture capitalist, Shan Weijian, and along with a profit-fixated partner Disney, the CCP can easily control and manipulate public opinions via rogue media like Vice. If you are able to follow the money, you will discover that a few CCP kleptocrats are the real boss behind the curtain. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the legal battle of the century, and I'm your host today. I'm Rachel. My partner Jenny, she's still busy, as I mentioned. She will be busy for a while, so for the next little while, it will be just me and Casey in the live stream room and bring you the production of our show. And today we will continue our last topic about the CCP's kleptocrats and kleptocracy that in China. And we will also tie into the case itself, which is the case that PAX brought against Miles on April 18th, 2017. And we will dive in a little bit, get you a little bit the detail of what the court documents is saying about 4 attempts of the prejudgment attachment that PAX has been seeking. So let's continue with our conversations with all the audiences last week about the CCP kleptocracy. And I find a picture that I really touched by it. And I want Casey to show you the slide, which is the slide titled The CCP Kleptocracy. And when the gentleman, which is she, cut it off, you can see his the whole head, but you can tell that's him. And he's standing behind the podium and doing everything in the name of the country and the people. But the shadow he casts, and in the shadow they're all lives and the dead bodies of the Chinese people. And this is not exaggeration. This is what's going on, has been going on for 72 years. But on the right hand, you have all those 100 families coming from the CCP kleptocrats. They claim to be the servant of the people. And they claim they've done everything in the name for the sake of the country's rejuvenation and for the sake of the people. However, they are themselves the biggest criminal in the whole world. So last week we showed you a clip of Stephen Bannon, an interview done by Nicole with Stephen Bannon, and Stephen Bannon gets it, and he said it bluntly that the CCP is a criminal enterprise. And today I'm still going to show you what does that mean, why Stephen Bannon is calling out the government so-called government as a criminal enterprise. And I couldn't agree with him more on that point. And they are a bunch of mafia. And right here, I only listed probably 8 or 9 of those kleptocrats. They are on the top. But in last episode, we've mentioned there are 3 major political factions within the CCP, and the fight between them and the turmoil created between those political struggles are bring down the whole entire world. And we are trying to tie in their activities with this case, but more importantly, we're trying to tie in everything with what we have been going through for the last past 2.5 years. But the pandemic, we will leave at the end. So for now, I will dive into the program because we have a lot compact for this show, and I would try my best to finish it, but I will remember to check with audiences in the middle, because I know this show is very brain draining, because you have to follow a lot of information, and you have to pay it great deal of attention to be able to follow. So I would try to slow down a little bit. So here we go. The second slide here, that's I chose a video that I created about 6-7 months ago regarding the Vice program, and aired at the end of 2020, if I remember correctly, 2021, sorry. So that was actually a second video HBO Vice has made attacking Miles Guo. And the second one that released last year, it was more obvious because it's a political hit piece calling Miles as a corrupt. However, if you remember, if many of you might not remember this or not even watch this, in 2017 there was another Vice made, and that is the picture that I showed you on the slide. That was made and released on November 17, 2017. Okay, in that year. In last episode, we've gone through a lot of things happened in that year. Those critical significant events that recorded by the U.S.-China Economic and Security Commission. So we're not going to go through that again. If you want to see that extensive list of events, you're welcome to go see episode 7, and this is episode 8. We just continue on with that thread. So in this particular picture, okay, this is a 7 minutes long interview that Vice HBO did in 2017. And in this particular interview, they chose a picture as the program cover, as you see on the screen. So when you look at that picture, I can't have a conversational dialogue with you. What's your first impression? When you look at a picture of what Vice HBO showed you. For me, like, if I don't know Miles Guo, I'm trying to imagine that if I'm putting myself at this third party, if I don't know Miles Guo, who he is, and I just run into the picture like this, and the first message tells me that he's not trustworthy. He's probably wealthy. The way he portrayed himself, he held a dog, a little puppy dog, and then on the other hand, he's holding a cup of coffee, and his facial expression is kind of weird, and it's not smiling, but it's kind of a weird facial expression, and at the background is the multi-million luxury apartment in Manhattan. So you kind of already, excuse me, creating a profile of him and project what you know about billionaires, what you know about rich person to Miles Guo, even though you know nothing about him. So this is exactly what the Vice HBO, the first propaganda they did. Okay, they're very subtle. They're not actually criticizing Miles Guo in the show, but they're insinuating. Okay, so this is the words. They're insinuating things that not there, but they leading you to think that somehow he is not trustworthy. On the other hand, compare with those kleptocrats who are in suits, who are in the best shape or form they can be on the camera, and telling you that I'm serving your best interests and I will give you everything you need. And on the other hand, the world we live in is upside down because it's penetrated it's permeated with the lies and deceptions that CCP has sowed for the last 3 decades. And this is what the mainstream media, HBO Vice, trying to portray. And in the beginning, if you followed, in the beginning of the show, we had played an intro video, and that is a second hit piece. And that's done by HBO, was done by another interviewer, reporter named Isabel Young. And I had created a series of videos to expose the CCP's lies and their proxies. And in that video I mentioned HBO Vice did this. It's not because HBO Vice is independent a news media and it suddenly interested in this whistleblower that coming out of nowhere in 2017 January 26th. It's not because they are truly interested. It's because they're controlled by the CCP. As I mentioned in that intro video, the HBO Vice is controlled by an organization called TPG. Okay, it's a private equity firm as well, and it's tied to this guy. But before we go into that picture, I want to show you a news reporter. And this news report is Report by Fortune, and it's published on June 19th, 2017. Okay, so its headline, it says, Vice gets a big investment to produce more video. Okay, so, and there's a barcode. So everything I mentioned here, especially publicly available data, I will put a put a QR code here so you can go there and read it for yourself. You can read the whole thing, not just what I showed you on the screen. So this one is in June 7th, 2017. It says Vice landed, how lucky they were. They landed $450 million investment from private equity firm called TPG. That the millennial-focused digital media company will use develop script programming and streaming video. The deal also reported boosts Vice value evaluation to $5.7 billion. How sweet that were. Though the company did not disclose the size of TPG's minority stake in Vice. They're saying minority stake, but according to Miles' whistleblowing, TPG sorry, not Miles, according to the research that done by the followers of whistleblower movement, they find that TPG actually is controlling 44% of the total interest through other venues as well. And who else is controlling the HBO Vice? Of course, it's Disney. And in the intro video, I also mentioned about the Disney's relationship with CCP. And matter of fact, if you go to the Hoover Institute, downloading a report called Americans China's influence in American interests, written in November 2019, you will see a dedicated chapter 7, on how CCP influenced American corporations to achieve CCP's goal overseas. And one of the stellar poster child example is Disney. And if you're interested in reading more, that is article you need to go and read. So back to Vice. So who really exerts control in Vice HBO? It's the CCP. That's why the intro video would tell you, excuse me, let me just stop a little bit. Have a sip of water. Okay, I think I'm better. So I can continue. So Vice basically is completely controlled by CCP. So the timing is also interesting. So as I mentioned, Miles Guo started whistleblowing in 2017, January, and then January, all the events occurred. And towards him, those lawsuits back in China, also in New York, everything happened, assassination, threats, everything. And also, so including this PAC legal cases against Miles. And following that, November 17, 2017, the Vice program very first time aired a piece, an interview with Miles, and insinuating that Miles is somehow corrupt and is not trustworthy. Okay, and just a few months before that, Fortune magazines announced that Vice gets money from TPG. And who is TPG? Let's go to the next slides. So in the intro video, I also give you a flavor of it. So this is a guy. Last episode, we talked about, how the CCP kleptocracy works, because all those people behind the scene, they are the official, they are the leaders, so-called the leaders of the country. But really, it's not a country. It's a criminal enterprise. Let's say that. And in order to maintain their fake image on outside, they need people to work for them covertly, right? So they don't reveal their real identity. And the most important thing, in the Stephen Bannon's video, Stephen Bannon mentioned, those kleptocracy, the number one things on the mind is how they can keep lying to the people so they can keep their legitimacy. So that's their task number one. Every day when they wake up from the bed, that's one thing they have to making sure that they still legitimate. Their real identity and real image is well concealed. That is why how Miles Guo become their enemy anyway, because we're whistleblowing. He's telling the truth. He's telling everybody the truth. So back to this guy. This guy's name is Shan Weijian. We already repeated multiple times throughout the show, so you have to get to know him. So he currently is the chairman and CEO of PAG. Okay, PAG is the parent company of PAX, who brought the legal case against Miles Guo. Okay, so this is all together. So, and he is a white glove, as we mentioned, as we introduced the vocabulary, the new glossaries for Western audiences. So kleptocrats, they need white gloves. They are public figures. They're very successful on the surface. They could be a business person, investors, capital venturists, executives, or news reporters, movie stars, or artists, whatever. They could be really, really great from the outside, but they are recruited or cultivated from very young age to do those dirty work for the CCP's kleptocrats. Main thing is to launder money and steal money from the Chinese or from American investors. Later on, if I'm not sure in this show I would touch on it, because depending on the time of the show, I might talk a little bit about how they actually steal U.S. investors' money and using those Ponzi schemes and scam. But I might not have time. So if we're running out of time, we will leave this to future episodes, and I would touch on that. So, not only Shan Weijian, but also the other on the picture. There's a couple at the corner, and we will get to him as well. We will first to get to the gentleman because they all spy. All three of them are registered spy for the CCP. Okay, so we're telling the truth. You're thinking that we're making this up. This is it. Whether you like it or not, this is a fact. So Shan Weijian is basically he's compromised and he is working for CCP. Period. So you go figure. The PAX legal case against Miles submitted to the docket to the New York Supreme Court on 2017 April 18th is not a coincidence. Okay, even though some people not linking this together, just like the U.S. Commission, the Security and Economic Commission, they detailed a lot of other things. They thieved through those CCP's propaganda trying to discredit Miles Guo, but they didn't link this particular legal cases into everything that CCP is orchestrated against Miles Guo, because why would they? They didn't know if Chris Wray didn't deliver his speech on 2020 July 7, telling Americans that CCP is the real threats to America and national security, and CCP is using all tool in all sector approach attacking America. How would you know? How would you know to link this piece into everything that CCP is orchestrated at the behind the scene? So, okay. Having said that, here I still I have a photo of this report. As I mentioned, the U.S.-China Economic and Security report here. They submitted to U.S. Congress in 2017. They spent full 3 pages, kind of detailed the Chinese government. I would say CCP kleptocrats. Discrediting of Miles Guo in international media. That's the heading. So under the heading, you will see 3 full pages of report in terms of what they observed that the Chinese government has done to the Miles Guo. Okay, and they've missed it quite a bit, as I mentioned in the previous show, but I'm not going to repeat that. So this leads to our case today. I want to talk about the case today. And the next slides, I added a symbol of communism, the Communist Party behind the PAG, because really that's who they are. You have to remember, this is not a coincidence, and I will prove to you again and again in this show, and this is not a coincidence, and I'm hoping you walk away with today's show knowing that this is CCP, and the PAC's legal case against Miles is nothing but a persecution and a hunt, and a continuous hunt of the few kleptocrats within the communist regime. Okay, so let's dive into a little bit, refresh our mind where we left in our last episode. So last episode we mentioned about the 3 steps formula the CCP used to, to eliminate any threat. Okay, regardless if you're Chinese or you're foreigners, the 3 steps and the 3 key things they focusing on is one's money, people's money, and people's relationship. They're not just actually scared off those people, make them not wanting to be your friends. They do a step further. They threatening them. They coerce them, and they ask your friend to turn back on you, and they force those so-called your friends to implicating you for saying that you are doing something wrong. Okay, they force them to doing a video televised confess. This is a very common and usual tactics of the CCP. So they want to destroy all of your relationships, scare the people away from you. Okay, and then they go after your reputation. So only they can discredit you, slander you, and make you seem like you somehow a criminal, suspect, or scumbags that people would find a reason to dislike you, because they want to fool the ordinary people as well. They want to gather all those manipulating of those public opinions. So they do a really good job. And in order to do all 3 of them, they need a propaganda and a corrupted judicial system. That's the 2 key elements for them to cook what they're cooking right now against the Miles Guo. So back to the PAC's case. Last time we said about PAC's tactics. The very first tactics is discrediting Miles by repeatedly citing CCP's propaganda. Okay, so that's exactly what the CCP propaganda is for. So we're going to dive in a little bit more today, and we have a lot of, because I have lots of time to do this series. So if you are interested to listen, and I will continue doing it, we have a lot of dirt and a lot of how I should say it, a lot of information that you would. I think if you are investigative journalists, if you are, a screenwriter or whatever, you would never, I would ever imagine in my entire life to see something like this. This is, you can find all the elements, the thrilling elements in this case. And I'm just honored to be able to have this opportunity to dig more on my own, to find all those things and to share with the audiences. So let's take a look at the discrediting Miles, because today a lot of the information is regarding that. So let's turn to the next slides, which I mentioned this in my previous show. So PACs altogether, they thought 4 prejudgment attachments against Miles Guo. Okay, so PACs, the whole case is about they're claiming Miles is owning them $30 million in debt. Miles signed a personal guarantee, to act a personal guarantee between to facilitate a loan that PACs loaned to another entity, which is allegedly controlled by Miles Guo. So this is their allegation. So that's why they are chasing Miles Guo for the $30 million original loan plus the interests. So it's mounted at 88 million at the time of 2017, April 18th. Okay, but doing things then, they've thought at the court 4 times of those prejudgment attachments. And these are the dates. As I said, all the documents are publicly available to everybody who is, can afford the time to read. You can go on, and the docket number is right there. Docket 28, 123, 250, and 272. And these are the time that they brought the prejudgment attachment. So today we're going to zoom in. Before we go into details, I want to give you a timeline, revisit the timeline of the case. So the case, it's like this, as I briefly mentioned, but I forgot I have a slide here. It's actually organized in a better way than what previously I said. So I'm going to repeat it. So PACs files a complaint against Miles Guo on April 18, 2017 for alleged damage that at the time totaled approximately 88 million. So on June 29, 2017, Mr. Guo Miles Counsel filed a motion to dismiss on foreign nonconvenience grounds about a week later. On July 7, 2017, PAX filed its first motion for the prejudgment order of attachment. On September 20, 2017, the court granted Mr. Guo's motion to dismiss on foreign nonconvenience and denied the attachment motion of PAX as moot. Because it's a moot point, right? Because you already dismissed the case. The case is, we're not going to accept it here in New York court. You can choose whatever alternative court you wanted to sue Miles Guo. So thank you, bye-bye. So that was it. But PAX appealed, and the First Department Appellate Division reversed the previous judge's decision. So they reversed the case dismissal on April 5th, 2018. So on April 11th, 2018, the court took a notice of the First Department's decision and instructed PAX to refile and update its motion for attachment. So this is the second prejudgment attachment received based on the first one. So on April 24th, 2018, PAX filed the second prejudgment order of attachment. So this is where we're going to spend some time on, which is the second one. Okay, so let's take to the next slides, which says PAX prejudgment attachment number 2. So as I mentioned, it's doc 1 to 3. You're welcome to read for yourself, but I chose the screenshots to show you, and then we will dive in. So this is what it says. It say Guo, and I explained Guo is a spelling from Cantonese. So if you're living in Hong Kong, you always spell Guo as Guo because that's how they phonetically pronounced. So, but we refer Guo as Guo, or we call him Miles, or seventh brother. So Miles is facing increasing pressure in addition to assets freeze. Okay, Chinese government authorities actively are pressuring his extradition. He is often presented as China's most wanted man. He is defendant in a growing number of lawsuits, both in New York and abroad. Guo's fraud relating to Beijing Pangu is particularly noteworthy. On June 9, 2017, the South China Morning Post reported the 3 employees of another Guo's entity, Beijing Pangu Investment Company Limited, pleaded guilty to fraud charges. Okay, so this is what PAX cited or wrote in their motion seeking the second prejudgment attachment. Okay, so let's. I'm going to spend some time here and maybe talk about each points here. So right before the top paragraph that I showed you, a paragraph above this, PAX mentioned that Miles's assets are reported to have been frozen because fraud charges are pending against him in China. That is why in the first paragraph, it says Guo is facing increasing pressure, in addition to the assets freezing. So as I previously shared, the Chinese court, Dalian Xigang Court, actually sentenced to freeze, made up a charge and did the sentence, and then they made an order. The court made an order to freeze all Miles's assets, about $17 billion US. Okay, so that's what happened, and then in the second paragraph, they mention about South China Morning Post, which we all know South China Morning Post is a CCP's propaganda, although they're based in Hong Kong, but they are completely a CCP, the party's propaganda machine. So let me just hold on a second. Let's take a look at my notes. Okay, this is went on. Okay, so it mentioned about the 3 employees that being trialed, and the 3 employees is Beijing Pangu Investment Company, which is Guo's company. And then I want to turn to the next slides. And this slide is saying on June 10th, 2017, okay? So this is a newspaper report by the Wall Street Journal reporting the events the PAX mentioned, okay, in his second prejudgment attachment motion. So this news, let's take a look. What does this news say about the same events? Okay, give you a little bit thing to think about. So the Wall Street Journal the title, the report is China cranks up heat on exiled tycoon Guo Wengui. And then it says 大连西港 People's Court, which heard the case, went to unusual lengths to open the proceedings to public views, posting videos of testimony in addition to the transcripts. Reuters reported the court also allowed one of its reporters to view a video feed of the trial from a room inside the courthouse, an almost unheard of level of access for foreign media. Okay, so does that sound strange? It does, because for Western audience, you might thinking, well, this is how the rule of law is supposed to work. This is how the court's supposed to work, right? Every hearing, you will have transcript. You will request to be able to have a media release. You know, all those things. There's a procedure to follow. This is nothing wrong with it. But in China, this is very, very wrong. This is not happening, and it also mentioned by Reuters. One of the reporters was invited into the room to watch the live feed, and it's never happened in the history. So that's why the Wall Street Journal and the Reuters reporter all kind of taken by surprise. Ooh, wow, this is so nice that I get to see all of this. And I wanted to share with you, just give you a comparison how unlikely for this to happen in a normal circumstances. I want to give you a flavor of another case that happened in China and was caught the international eyes of many foreign medias. Okay, so this is the next slide. And this is a report, and I'm not sure whether Americans have, paid attention to this news. This is Canadian news, and there's two Michaels back in, I think it was 2018. They were at the end of 2018 or early 2019, I can't remember, but they were detained, captured by the Chinese government. And in 2000, this is a news report coming out on 2021, March 22. And it was reporting about the day of the trial of one of the Michaels, which is, I believe, is Michael Spavor, who was a former Canadian diplomat. Okay, so and it was a hearing, and the Jim Nicol, who at the time was the Canadian Embassy Deputy Chief of Mission, and according to him, that he was barred from entry. So we have a short clip of video that I want Casey to play for you guys. It's coming from CNN. Let's take a look at that.
Diplomatic show of force outside.
Lithuania. Spain. Yeah.
For what Canada calls a violation of international law inside. Canadian Michael Kovrig had his day in court, but in a secret trial. China accuses him of undermining its national security. Fellow Canadian Michael Spavor was tried in the same way last week in the northeastern city of Dandong. Both men now held in China for more than 2 years, await a verdict and their fate at the hands of the Chinese government.
I'm not surprised that there's no verdict. I can't comment on what happened in the court today, as we were not witness to the trial.
Okay, thank you, Casey, for playing that short clip. Of course, the whole clip is longer, but for the purpose of the show, I just cut it short because we have only limited time. So these in the interview, you probably already saw Jim Nicol, and he was interviewed by the CNN, and he telling the CNN, those information that I just shared with you, that he was not allowed to go into the court to basically witness the hearing. But according to this report released on March 2022, it says diplomats and journalists were denied access to the trials with the explanation that the hearing were being held behind closed doors because of alleged national security concerns. So these two gentlemen were charged in June 2020 under what's called broadly defined national security laws. Okay, so what is that? We don't know. There's no detail. It's just very broad charges, and they were charged, and they were actually secretly detained for 2.5 years before they actually get to the hearing. But then at the hearing, nobody can hear what's going on in the courtroom. So this is how much telling you the rule bylaw system, how the rule bylaw system works in the communist China. So the U.S. Senator, excuse me, Jim Rich wrote on his Twitter, he said, "It is reprehensible that China is holding trials in secret, okay, against the Canadian Michael Kovrig and Michael Sparvel. China should stop taking hostages and instead uphold basic human rights and rule of law. Both men should be released immediately." You know, I thank the senator, but what he is saying is empty, because the CCP, the kleptocrats, they don't respect any human, let alone any basic human rights. They don't have rule of law. They say they have, but they don't. All they have is rule by law. And whose law? The CCP kleptocrats' law. So there's no way for a civilized society to talk to a mafia, ask them to uphold basic human rights. It's like you're talking English, but I'm only understanding Chinese. And how do you convey me the meanings that you want, what you want? It's insane. It's impossible. So that's why we have to take down the corrupted system and take away those people at the top who has sacrificed every person else on the planet Earth for their own gaining. And these are the dictatorship. These are evil, brutal regime that we observed for the last 72 years. It's just people not willing to come to terms to see who they really are. Until that, they've been pushed right in front of the face. Not even then, everybody willing to open their eyes to face the reality, and they still wanted to think fantasy, but they have to wake up. So this case, I put it here, just wanted to show you how open the CCP kleptocrats and the regime has been, okay, and particularly to the foreign media. So this is give you a flavor of how unusual. In the Miles case, they actually invite foreign media to report. They actually pumping up, as I mentioned in the last episode. They put their propaganda machine in full swing and in full force. You know, they want this information to get out. They want this 3 employee, the trial of the Beijing Pangu, to get out. And because they forced those 3 employees, one of the ladies, the manager that used to work for the Beijing Pangu, which owned by Miles, and forced her to say that she was forced by Miles, Mr. Guo, to fake documents. Okay, so again, that's their usual tactics. They make up something and then force people to do the things that they want them to do. Otherwise, these people are going to beat them, their family's going to hurt, they're going to, they're going to be eliminated and kidnapped. So that's what the mafia do to get what they want. So let's move on to our next slides. So we're going to go back to the Pax's prejudgment attachment number 2. Okay, so that's a doc 123. So in the rest of the documents, it spent a lot of time talking who is Miles. Okay, so here is a screenshots of what they say. I have to put on my glasses so I can see it better. So the Beijing Pangu fraud is far from an isolated incident. So they're talking about the 3 employees, the trial that happened in the Chinese court that find the 3 employees are committed fraud. And the reason why they committed fraud is because Miles Guo told them so, force them to do that. Okay, so they say they're not isolated incident. Guo has been implicated as mastermind behind several frauds, and has been caused by former business associates of hiding assets and, on debts, reneging on debts. Okay, and then for example, they give some examples. And the first example is, according to a report in June 2017, a persecutor in Liaoning province. How nice they were using a persecutor from the CCP's corrupted judicial system, and saying they filed charges against the executives and employees of Beijing Pangu, alleging Guo ordered employees to transfer more than 400 million yuan to companies controlled by Guo, so Guo could pocket the proceeds personally. And the second, they went on to say, according to July 2017 reports, an investment fund in Abu Dhabi has alleged that Guo, after receiving control of the 1.5 billion in assets, blah, blah, blah. And that report is also reported by Chinese propaganda, which called Caixin. Everybody familiar with it, right? Caixin. the lady who is one of the kleptocrats' mistress, Hu Shuli. She is the editor-in-chief for Caixin. Okay, so this is all comes together. But Peck said, I'm not making this up. I'm merely just citing a person's affirmation. So all of those information you see portraying who Miles Guo really is coming from a person called Francis. Okay, and his affidavit, because Francis promised, signed under perjury, penalty of perjury, that he's telling the truth, that he swore that this is true. So let's take a look. Who is this Francis? So let's go to the next slide. So the full name of Francis is Nathaniel. Actually, I spell it wrong. I noticed it because there's the H behind T. But anyway, he goes by Net. Anyway, if you go on into LinkedIn, you can search his public profile. His name is Net Francis. So let's forget about the T, the H that I missed. So who is him? So on this day, personally appeared before me, Nathaniel Francis, and after being by me first duly sworn, according to law, state as follows: I am an investigative analyst and a certified fraud examiner employed by Confidential Global Investigations, CGI, a private investigation firm licensed in New York. Many of the whistleblower movement followers are very familiar with CGI, right? And in later of the episodes, in future episodes, I will get there, but we still have a long way to go because this is only 2018. Okay, Doc 140 is Nathaniel Francis affirmation. So you can find it, and he signed under the penalty of perjury, saying that he's telling the truth. And so, what did he say? Oh, before take a look, what did he say? Let's take a look. How does CGI investigate? So how does Miss Francis and his colleague investigate the information that Pax quoted in possibly verbatim? Okay, so this is what in his affirmation he mentioned, that among other things, our team researched and analyzed the publicly available records and documents, including, if not exclusively, CCP propaganda. Okay, and they conduct interviews. I'm not sure who they interviewed, and they compiled news and web-based reports on Guo and his assets. Okay, so he's telling you where he's obtaining his information. However, in this 11-page documents of affirmation, this Mr. Francis used 3 full pages of CCP's propaganda. At the bottom of the screen, you will see 1, 2, 3 full pages. Okay, there's a lot of CCP's propaganda. And I'm not going to waste your time because I've already told you anything coming from CCP's propaganda, they're not trustworthy. Okay, they are fake. Most of them are fake documents. They might at one time throw a little bit of truth just to confuse you and cloud you. But it's a wasting of time because they put everything together for you to see. That's why we're not going to dive in. We already said enough in our previous 2 shows about what the propaganda was. And if you are interested to read all those propaganda yourself, you're very welcome. You can go into the doc 140 and then read all full pages. But what I really want to spend some time on today is really talk about who really is Nathaniel Francis. Okay, so let's go to the next slides. And I know this is a little bit heavy lifting because it's, there's a lot of faces on this slide. And for whistleblower movement followers, this is easier for us to digest because we follow Guo and we've, many of us take initiative to research, to dig more, to kind of learn what's going on. We follow what the trace of evidence that Miles provided us, although it's bits and pieces, it's all over the place. And then we dig on internet, we read a lot of public reports, we dive in, and we find a lot of things that's very, very strange. I feel like I can be a part-time investigative journalist after I download those research myself. But anyway, Nathaniel Francis is a certified fraud examiner. Okay, so he does investigation for a living, and his employer is CGI, as I mentioned, but he's also CGI is affiliated with a law firm called Satan Law Group. So I actually have a public profile of Nat Francis in front of me on his LinkedIn. I'm just going to read a little bit for you. So this is what he under. So he worked there since 2010. So 12 years to present time. So 12 years. So a little has a quite a bit tenure, I would say. So CGI provides solutions for law firms, corporation, individual services, including due diligence on domestic foreign companies, securing return on investment for distressed investments, proven business developer for both CGI and its affiliated law firm, Satan Law Group LLP, managing client accounts such as large private equity funds and hedge funds. So, and then all the posts, all the activities under Mr. Francis or about Satan Law Group. So obviously there is a close relationship between the CGI and the Satan Law Group, and a few partner of Satan Law worth mentioning also working in CGI. So I think they are maybe a spin-off enterprises on the side. So anyway, so back to our slides where we say, Nathaniel Francis, connect the dots with the Richard Franco. So who is Richard Franco? Richard Franco, of course, the Nathaniel Francis and Richard Franco are both American citizens, just by look of, their and by the profession that they do. So Richard Franco was a former FBI special agent in charge, short for SAC, I think, SAC or something, but it's really for special agent in charge. And he retired in January 2016. Okay, so he's no longer working for FBI, but after his retirement, I mentioned he's a lawyer, so he worked for law firm. Again, he worked starting 2017, I believe, if I remember the day wrong, or maybe 18. He started 17. Sorry, it's 17. 2017. He started working for Satan Law Group. Okay, so he became attorney of counsel for Satan Law Group, and also he started working for CGI as a investigator. Okay, so that's how Nathaniel Francis get to know Richard Franco. I don't know whether they've known each other prior to 2017 when Richard Franco started working there or not. I don't know, but this is how Nathaniel Francis linked to Richard Franco. So let's take a look at who Richard Franco knows. So Richard Franco, of course, knows a lot of people, but unfortunately, he actually become a friend, I would say a very close friend and business partner with a very unfortunate person. This is Bruno Wu. The way I say very unfortunately they met, because Bruno Wu is a registered CCP spy. And nothing good come out of that relationship, because he is represent the evil regime and it will destroy everything, including people. So Bruno Wu, chairman of Seven Sun Star Investment Group and chairman of the GPACA. We will later on show you what GPACA means and when it's was formed. And former executive chairman of Ideanomics. So as I mentioned, these and Wu Zhen is linked with Shan Weijian. So Shan Weijian, as I mentioned earlier, is the CEO of PAG, which is the case that brought against Miles. But he's also previously partner of the TPG who dumped $450 million to purchase Vice. Remember that news we just showed you earlier? Shan Weijian also invested $500 million into Wu Zhen's company, Sun Seven Star Group, according to Miles. So they are investing in each other. So Shan Weijian is providing funds for Wu Zhen. Wu Zhen really, they both are the CCP's registered spies, but they serve a different purpose. Wu Zhen is more like I would say a spy master. So he's like a linchpin. He's linking his recruits. He's he's idea man, and he finding the people he wants, and he execute the work that from Shan or from his boss directly, and then he make them work. Okay, so he's kind of linchpin. He knows a lot of people. He's well connected, but his efforts and time really not into business. That's why all the business he touched really busted up, busted as the bubble, because that's not his full-time job. His full-time job is how to find the person and do the things that the master wants him to do. But he needs the money. If his business is not successful, where the money come from? Then he need a successful, business to support his spy activity, and that money is coming from Shan Weijian. So that's how the network ins and outs works. But their masters is Wang Qishan. Although Bruno Wu sometimes, I don't know who he reports to, but he do not directly reports to Wang Qishan. He might report it to other CCP kleptocrats a little bit lower than the Wang Qishan, but they all in the same camp. Remember the three factions I mentioned in last episode? They belong to the Wang Jiangzhen faction. Okay, so Shan Weijian and Bruno Wu are belonging to that faction. And who Wang Qishan is? He is a vice president of China. Okay, but really, I don't want to refer him as that title because that means they are a country's leader, but they are really not a country's leader. They're not elected by the people, and they are the criminal enterprise. I would rather refer him as the secretary of the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection. He left that position in 2017. From 2012 to 2017 or 18, he was the one that in charging of anti-corruption. Can you imagine? The most corrupted leader in the world, the most corrupted leader in China, is actually the head in charging of anti-corruption campaign inside China. So that's basically the word is upside down, as I mentioned early on. So let's put some substances to Bruno Wu because I accused him as a spy. So I will show you some information here. Next slide, who is Bruno Wu Zhen? We will come back when we finish talk about Wu Zhen. We might not have all the time we have, but I'm watching for time and we're still good. We still have a little bit time left. So who is Bruno Wu Zhen? Wu Zhen is American citizen, okay? And he is a CCP registered spy. So that means he has a number in the system. And white gloves are one faction. Wang Qishan is one of the kleptocrats, as I mentioned, in the communist regime. And interestingly, he registered as a foreign agent at DOC in 2018, December 3rd, 2018. So the picture on the right and show you a copy of his registration for a FORA, because he's American citizen, right? If he is lobbying for another country's interest, then he needs to be registered. Otherwise, he's breaking the law, right? Because the United States has a law called Foreign Agent Acts or something. The reason why he registered is because extradition. Remember that previously there is a slide where I said the PACs, in one of the PACs, prejudgment attachment number 2, slides number 11, the screenshots, the first on the top, the PACs mentioning about Guo is, facing increasing pressure. One is assets freedom, and the second is extradition. Remember that? So yeah, so extradition. So this is exactly the timing. So this is a whole another show. So I will spend some more time talk about the extradition. But for now, I just wanted to quickly, the reason why Wu Zhen registered in December 2018 is because that extradition scheme orchestrated by CCP using illegal means has been busted by DOJ. And as a result, they charged two people indicted for that. One is Nicolene Davis, American businesswoman, and the other one you would know, any Americans would know, Eloy Brody. Eloy Brody was the former deputy finance chair for the National Committee. Okay, so he worked really close with Stephen Wynn and Donald Trump for his election, for his presidential election. So he was charged as well, and both of them admitted guilty. And they signed, their plea guilty in November 2018. Okay, and this is why prompt Wu Zhen to register with the DOJ as the foreign registered agent, because his dark skin at the back is pretty much exposed. Okay, so this is the reason why. Okay, so here we're gonna go to something really, this is bombshell when the first time that Miles Guo, blowed it out. It was 2017, March 8th. Okay, that was an International Women's Day. I remember, and Miles did a second interview with the Mirror Media Group. As I mentioned in the last episode, the first interview Miles did with the Mirror Media Group was on January 26th that year, and that day he officially kicked off his whistleblowing, the entire whistleblower movement that day. So that's a very, monumental landmark day for a whistleblower movement and for all the new federal state, for all the citizens of the new federal state of China, because the fate of the country, the fate of 1.4 billion Chinese deplorables are changed that day. So in the second interview, Miles played an audio recording of him and Bruno Wu, in which Wu revealed his identity and delivered a death threat to Miles on behalf of the kleptocrats. So I have a video here. I'm just going to ask Casey to play maybe a minute or so, a minute or 9 seconds for you, because they're in Chinese. You'll not be able to understand, but I will translate when we come back. Okay, so Casey, if you can play that a little bit. Thank you.
这个时间是错的啊，这时间是错的啊。
好。
专案组已经将你在国内的各项资产情况和各种行为已经初步的查清。第三，抓你家人，主要是因为他们已经触犯法律，涉嫌犯罪。也是因为你迟迟没有回来配合调查，才对他们采取了强制措施。如果你配合调查，考虑家人马上
好，
向你重申，我现在我就告诉你这个刚刚跟你说的，向你重申，你在历史上有重大贡献，对你说的4项承诺仍然有效，保证你的安全，希望你慎重考虑。喂。
Okay, so thank you, Casey. So that is, unfortunately, it's in Chinese, but you can find on YouTube. You can find this full interview and on YouTube under I think maybe under the Mirror Group. I can't remember, but if you search it, you can find it. So I'm going to translate a little bit. I won't turn to the next slide because it has the Chinese there, so I will translate it accordingly for you guys. So although this interview happened in 2017, but the video recording that Miles shared with everybody in public was recorded. The events was happened. The conversation between Bruno Wu and him happened in 2015, 2 years prior. Okay, so the portion he started playing the audio where I have the red square, like the red box, but above that it was just a background. Let the people to understand what the background is. So the conversation coming out from this angle. Okay, so Wu Zhen come to talk to Miles. And he said, Miles, Mr. Guo, I want to convey 4 main things to you, okay? And this is, I'm doing so on behalf of the Central Discipline Inspection Committee, okay? And remember, I just mentioned who Wang Qishan was. He was the secretary of the Central Discipline Inspection Committee, right? So he's a top boss who is anti-corruption. And Wu Zhen here now saying that I am, convey 4 main things to you on behalf of them, okay? So the first is every demand I ask you today is coming from, the Central Discipline Committee. Okay, that's the first thing you need to remember. The second, he said, I need you to continue to investigate a person's name called Wang Chen in the United States. You need to get information. You need to get information on his activity, and then you need to transfer those information securely to me. Third, you have to do this. You have to do what I ask you to do unconditionally, basically with no condition attached. Okay, and this is for your own good. Fourth, he said, the task force from this Central Discipline Inspection Committee has already detained your families and your employees. They have already frozen your assets, your bank account, and etc. And only if you go back to China and cooperate with our investigation and do everything we want you to do, everything will be taken care of. Okay. And then he starts saying, in the red box, he said, if you, doing reckless things in United States or abroad, and if you become the enemy of the country, which the country refers to China, you will be dead without burial place. That's a direct translation, but what it says, you will die basically. You will die very badly. Okay, so but Chinese say you will die without a burial place. Basically, that's a death threat. Okay, so if you're doing things recklessly, and if you are, become enemy of the nation, but really, what does that mean? Become enemy of the nation? Miles Guo merely whistleblowing the dirty secrets that those top CCP kleptocrats wanted to conceal because they're criminals. They're embezzling trillions of public money, and that's what they have been doing, And Wu continue saying, at the same time, the task force of the Central Inspection Committee will send the Interpol red notice to you and your son. Okay, this is 2015, and in 2017, April 18th and 19th. They did. The Interpol did, under the pressure of the Chinese government, issued a red notice and to capture Miles Guo, right? Because the Chinese CCP kleptocrats used their corrupt judicial system and propaganda and painted Miles as a criminal suspect. Okay, so, but this threat was made in 2015. Okay, and then Miles didn't say much. He said, yeah, okay. And then Wu said, the task force has already, has a very clean ideas. We already gathered all the information about your assets, about your activities domestically. That means in mainland China. So we are very clear, how your business, your assets, where you hire, blah blah, all those things. We have it all, he said. And then he went on. He said, we capture your family is because they committed a crime, but also because you didn't return to China to cooperate us to do our investigation. So that is why we actually taking the stronger measure to capture them. Okay, I guess you guess, why, what the reason why they actually detained and captured and jailed Miles Guo's family and employees. I think the later part is the real reason, is because they want to pressure Miles to go back home, but Miles didn't. He didn't go back to China. And he said, if you actually start cooperate, your family will immediately be released. Okay, so this is what he said. And Miles said, oh, okay. And then at the end, and Wu said, I will reiterate to you, I'm telling you, okay, these CCP kleptocrats asked me to tell you, and I have to reassure you, what you did in history is making a huge contribution to the country. I will give you the 4 promises, okay? The 4 promises I gave you before, still invalid. I will keep you safe, and I think you need to think it clearly and carefully. Okay, so basically this is what I did a translation. Maybe it's not 100% accurate, but I think it's captured pretty much 95-99% of what the gist of the conversation is. So it's a death threat that Bruno Wu has delivered, in 2015, and it mentioned about red notice, and mentioned about cooperation and investigation, and mentioned about why they capture Miles's family, and only if Miles going back to home and working for the kleptocrats, then they will release the family. So in here again, you know, everything they do, those kleptocrats they do, they in the name of the country. They still mention about, oh, you are making huge contributions in history. Well, you know, we'll have you, you know, you are a good man. They're helping the country to do anti-corruption, but really it's not, because they're forcing people like Miles, who are well connected in the business arena, to do investigation on someone else. They want someone else's dirt, and they want hunting that someone else, because that someone else is politically or economically challenging those kleptocrats personally. So it's nothing to do with public money. This is all personal issues, but they are under the name of the nation and the people. That's again and again and again, because that's lie and deception. So as a spy, as working for the one faction, he only answers to one. Right? So that is why he is already, talked to Miles in 2015. So that's also really why Miles later on decided, you know, he needs to end the system. It is not a one kleptocrat, not two, not three. You know, it's the system that creating many more. If you get rid of those kleptocrats, there will be more popping up, because the whole system is rotting, and everything. If you put a good seed in this rotten land, is still growing up bad crop. So you have to change, you know, the system. So that is why we're taking down the CCP. We're not taking down one or two kleptocrats. A matter of fact, Miles in his whistleblower live stream said many times, if any of those kleptocrats willing to come to us and become the whistleblower and helping us to take down the system, they're welcome. You know, they're welcome to step to the light. You know, coming from the darkness and coming from the light. You're welcomed. But I guess they were not, because they will fight to the end, and that's who they are and how they think. And then we went on to say who Bruno Wu is. And now today we're already over time. I have a lot of information about who Bruno Wu is and how he actually using his Ponzi scheme in the United States to cheat, and his relationship with Richard Franco, and a really, really, really worse questioning, because it feels like they are closer than ever. They're closer than any other relationship you would imagine, because they're really close in business. And I'm not sure, you know, FBI or any U.S. Government agencies would look into where Richard Franco, makes his living and money, and I'm sure you will find tons of dirt between Bruno Wu and Richard Franco. But I will leave this probably in the next episode, because we're really close. We're really out of time. But I want to end. I wanted Casey to go to slides 23, which is Miles' deposition on October 3rd, 2018. So this is the page I wanted people to see. So this is a deposition that Miles did. So through this PAX proceeding against Miles did a number of deposition. I believe this is the first deposition he did. And in this deposition, or maybe not the first, the second, he said, he answered to Eddie Moss, which is the counsel for PAX. Eddie Moss asked him a question, and this is what Miles's answer was. I did not use any one of these for this. I did not use anyone or any for this. I don't understand what you mean by that. I never discussed this litigation. I think this is just a crazy case. I think this is just scamming. I think you guys a bunch of thugs. I think you are just mafia. You are working for the communists. You are doing threats and racketeering. The whole world knows what you are doing. You are helping the mafia. You are destroying a good person. I do not need to pay any attention to you at all. So that's the word. That's the testimony in the deposition on October 3rd, 2018 from Miles Guo. And I think he's telling the truth. Okay, so all of them are just thugs. And they're doing those things for the CCP because they've been compromised. I don't know how they've been compromised. Maybe money, maybe something else. We don't know. But we will get there one day. And this is the last slides. I want to end the last slides. So this case is about deception. It's about collusion. It's about corruption. And I will dig more and I will show you. I have a lot of evidences. And initially in this show, I want to show you the falsified signature. We want to show you the signatures in the contract. But I thought maybe I wait a little bit because there's a lot more things I want to share with you guys before we go that way. But throughout the show, I will show you deception, collusion, and corruption. So at the end of the day, you know, what true is true. Nothing can cover that. It will come out of the under the sun. So with your help, of course. So if you like the show, please subscribe. And I'm gonna put this is live in Glory World, but I will put the recorded video uploaded on my YouTube channel as well. And you're welcome to subscribe my YouTube channel, Miracle 7. So thank you very much for Kathy's time and for your time to watching this program. And I will see you next Tuesday. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye. In this episode, we provide you with information to answer this question. Why was Isabel, a foreign journalist, given a special privilege to report on Xinjiang in her 2019 Vice documentary, Why Others Were Banned? We divided our answer into 4 parts. Part 4. Who is the big boss? In the previous parts, we've spent quite a bit of time on Isabel, the reporter. Now we will take a closer look at Isabel's current employer, Vice Media, and its relationship with Isabel's previous employer, the Chinese Communist Party. The biggest shareholder of Vice Media is TPG Capital, which has a 44% stake in Vice. Shan Weijian, who once was a partner of TPG Capital, is now the chairman and CEO of Pacific Alliance Group, PAG, a leading Asia-focused private equity firm that manages $45 billion in assets around the globe. Shan Weijian, an accomplished Ivy League-educated executive, a successful venture capitalist, comes from a spy family in communist China. Both of his parents worked for the CCP's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, also known as the intelligence agency of the CCP. Unlike Isabel, who at least attempted to conceal her identity by claiming she was an undercover journalist in Xinjiang rather than a CCP propagandist, Shan Weijian has publicly defended Communist China in news articles and on public television. In one of his articles published by the South China Morning Post on October 20th, 2020, 112 days after the enactment of the Hong Kong national security law imposed by the CCP, Shan Weijian wrote, "The freedoms enjoyed by Hong Kong people were seriously threatened and undermined during the violent turmoil in the better half of last year. The national security law ended this reign of terror. Hong Kong remains an open and free society under the rule of law. Hong Kong residents enjoy more political rights today than they did under British colonial rule." As a person who claims residence in Hong Kong for over 20 years and is well connected with the Western world, ought to know what has happened in Hong Kong. His blatant lies expose the fact that he too works for the CCP. The other major shareholder of Vice Media is Disney, owning 16% of Vice. Disney's infamous appeasement to the CCP has been vividly depicted in the South Park Season 23, Episode 2, Banned in China. Here is a clip of it.
Who's the asshole? Which one of you decided to go and start bad-mouthing the Chinese government, huh? Who here thought they had permission to say anything critical of Chinese politics?
Well, it is true, sir. The Chinese seem to exploit their own people with forced labor.
Shut the fuck up, Thor! You're here to flex and not think, you fucking bitch!
A communism fangirl wrapped up under public image of an award-winning human rights reporter, Isabel Yang, an undercover CCP agent with the facade of a venture capitalist, Shan Weijian, and along with a profit-fixated partner Disney, the CCP can easily control and manipulate public opinions via rogue media like Vice. If you are able to follow the money, you will discover that a few CCP kleptocrats are the real boss behind the curtain.
他们的恐惧是我们的武器，我们的胜利。谢谢了，兄弟姐妹们，你们健身了吗？行动，行动，行动！中共，你完了 ！Take down the CCP！
Just begin. Just watch and see. It's all started, everything's begun, and you are over. Cause we're taking down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. Let's take down the CCP. Let the bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. Let the bullets fly a little longer.
中共
Let the bullets fly a little
你
longer.
完了，
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
中共你完了，干灭中国共产党这个 CCP， 才能让我们远离恐惧。Take down CCP。
They try to scare the nation with fabrication, but we see through the lies. We won't fall, we will fight you back. Police corruption with crooked assumption. They ran our lives, but no more. We will win. We will take down the CCP. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. We will fight till they're all gone. We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong. Spread the word all through Hong Kong. Let's take down the CCP. Let the bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. Let the bullets fly a little longer.
站起来吧，
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
站起来吧，
Let the bullets fly a little
为
longer.
奴役的人们
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
行动，
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
行动，
Let the bullets fly a little
你
longer.
完了
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
，Take down CCP。
Bullets fly a little longer, and you will surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer. We will have freedom to live. We will win. You'll surrender. Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down
Let the bullets fly a little longer.
Take down the evil CCP.